Hello, everyone. So the topic for today's webinar is strategy and OKRs. How do they connect to one another? How does the OKR process help you validate your strategy and make sure that you are on the right track and doing the right things? This topic is actually very relevant any time of the year, but especially at the beginning of the year when we are thinking as a company, as a business, where are we going? How are we going to make sure that we are moving in the right direction? Before Richard starts the topic, let's take care of a few housekeeping items. So you will get the recording within 24 hours after this session. You can also ask questions during this specific live session interaction. In Zoom, if you hover over your screen, you will see a chat box and a Q&A box. So for the questions related to the topic of this webinar, use the Q&A box, because today we have our Weekdone team here with us who will be helping answering your questions live during the session. Richard will start a short poll in a bit where it will ask you about your role and business area and what is your relationship to the OKR process. This will help us understand our audience a little bit better so that when we are answering your questions, we can be a little bit more precise and specific to your use cases. We will be doing other webinars in the future. So if there are any other topics that you'd like us to cover, please let us know. You can contact us after the webinar, or you can already pitch your ideas during this session. There is one thing that I wanted to mention before we begin and before I introduce Richard. First is after the main part of the webinar, but before the end and before the Q&A session, we will introduce some additional resources where you can learn from. So if you're coming to this webinar with an aim and the objective of learning how to do OKRs properly, we're going to share more resources with you so that you can continue your learning journey as well. And in general, make sure to use this opportunity to ask as many questions as you can. I have a hunch that a lot of you guys are coming with a background of doing a balanced scorecard. We will be covering a completely different angle here, but if you have any questions related to that, do let us know in the live Q&A section. So, let me introduce our speaker today. So Richard is the head of customer success and sales in Weekdone, and he has been teaching companies and coaching companies and different size of companies on how to be successful in their OKR process, in the change management initiatives. And he has a lot of practical experience. He literally does it every single day. So I do urge you to ask the questions that you have on your mind coming to this topic of this specific webinar. And without further ado, Richard, take it away and have a nice webinar.
Thank you, Anna. Hi, everybody. As Anna said, I'm Richard. And what are we going to cover today? Well, what is strategy? What it needs to cover? Taking that strategy and bringing it down to the organization through an OKR hierarchy. Alignment is the other topic we're going to cover. How do we set company, department, team levels and align it? Then we're going to briefly talk about cross-functional OKRs. One of the issues we often see is people make things very complicated. They start to worry about getting everything aligned to everything. When and when shouldn't you use cross-functional? We'll go into a quick summary and then we'll go into the questions. So as Anna said, please ask your questions as we're going along. What we will do is try and consolidate the questions so the common themes that are coming up will answer live at the end for you as well. So as we said, Q&A section. I see somebody's already asked a question, which is great. Let's get into the webinar now. So, you know, a lot of companies talk about vision, mission, strategy, and the vision and mission being a very long-term directional elements of where we want to take the business. What's the point of our business? Then we have strategy, often a 2, 3, 5 year sort of horizon for strategy, and then OKRs. So in this case, we're using OKRs as the goal setting method. Strategy to OKRs and vision mission strategy to OKRs have different timescales. And we're going to cover basically how do we get from one to the other. First of all, what's strategy? Well, it means a lot of different things to different people. And I often, when I start these webinars, I have my interpretation of what a good strategy is and what methods I like to use. But I did a quick Google search and I was horrified at the different versions, suggestions, items on the internet. Very, very varied. Some from the 45 business strategies to other many different methods and advice. Some great, some not so good, but it often ends up in overload. And one of the things we often see is people don't necessarily think about strategy, or they muddle strategy and planning all together. What is strategy? Well, often it's determined as where do we want to play and how do we want to win, and it's into the future. It's all about product, price, service differentiation, customer fit. Where are we going to get them, and how are we going to win, but in a general term. And tactically, i.e. strategies need to move into tactics later on, which is much more specifically, how are we going to win? How are we going to execute things to win business? But it starts from where are we going to play? And we're going to cover a bit more on that. But strategy sets the directions and outlines where to play and how to win. The other thing is it very much changes over time. So strategy, as I said before, is often on a 2, 3, 5-year horizon, whereas strategy roadmap to directional objectives, part of alignment of OKRs, are moving down to annual, and actionable objectives and OKRs are set at a quarterly cadence. We've got to take ourselves from a 2, 3, 5-year strategy and deliver down to tactics that the teams and people in the company can relate to. One of the big issues often with strategy is, for leadership, it's super important. But translating just straight from a strategy to what am I going to do this week, this month, this quarter is very difficult for most people in the company. And we need to make sure we've mapped that correctly and we're guiding people in the right direction. Now, one of the models I particularly like, and this isn't my creation, this is somebody called Roger Martin. He writes a lot on strategy, and he has this simple model. Where to play, how to win. We discussed where are we going to play, how we're going to win. And from there, we can come up with winning aspirations, capabilities, and management systems. Why do I like this? Well, all of us, whether we've formally set a strategy yet, or we have a loose strategy, most of us know where we're playing, what geographic regions, what's our customer targets, etc. We also generally either have an idea of how we're going to win and why we're going to win, or we are winning and we can set that there. Now, the strategy then needs to go into the future. So these are going to be aspirational for the future in the end. And if we have those two, we can come up with a winning aspiration. And if we have those two, we can think about capabilities and management systems. That, to me, very clearly segments things. And I really recommend reading some of Roger Martin's writings. And he talks about this as a model. The other thing he mentions a lot is thinking about how you question what will be true. So, what would need to be true for where to play, how to win, capabilities, management systems. I'm not going to go into full details there. What we're going to do is try and take this into something more practical, and we're going to try and do an example. So I wanted to pick a slightly different example this time. We often do sort of traditional businesses, and I thought, well, okay, people often question, will it work for me? In this case, let's pick a business school established, based in Europe, and they're going through their strategic planning. And they said, right, okay, it's now time for us to really grow. And they said, where to play? And that's where they're going to start. And they said, well, we're in Europe, we're focused on entrepreneurs. So we're a business school focused on entrepreneurs and educating entrepreneurs. We want to expand into Asia and Africa, and then on next to Americas, where it's more competitive. So basically, they've mapped out a little bit of their longer term where to play. Now in Europe, expanding to Asia and Africa, and after they've done that, Americas. How to win? Well, the feeling is that we have unique curriculums, skilled lecturers, track record of successful graduates. So here we are. We've got that, and we've got pricing and costs that are competitive with the US dominant players. So we know we're going to be competing against some large US education establishments. But we believe we have a number of areas where we are unique and we could win. We've then taken that and we've come back to doing our winning aspiration. So we want to be the leading education establishment for entrepreneurs worldwide, that we have innovative courses that teach the latest tool and methods. So we're not static, we're alive, we're moving forward, we're teaching the best business practices. Now, in that same model, we had capabilities. Well, now we're going to have marketing, the ability to market and get known outside of Europe. We probably managed our courses quite well within a small education environment, but now the course management and payment systems are going to become a lot more complicated as we scale. We can't necessarily just scale people to do it because we need to keep the costs under control. And then we set some management systems. We're looking to be measurement driven. We have admin processes at scale. We need to be able to recruit regional stars to lecture for us as well in the future. Now, this is maybe our first pass. This might not be perfect, but we can come back to it. And the arrows indicate that from winning aspiration to where to play, to how to win, to capabilities, to management systems flow down. But we might in the future understand that, hey, we need a different capability or different management systems, or how to win changes. Things change. And it can feed back up again. So basically the idea here is, and the other reason I really like this model is, it's not static. If I want to come back and review it in a year's time, I can think about what has changed. What areas do we need to refine or improve in our strategy here? And if I do that, it'll drive me to think up and down the strategy model here on what else has changed. So we've done our strategy, our first pass, but that's over multiple years. We kind of know it's going to take us 3-5 years to get that executed on. We need to now think about it and say, well, how are we going to segment it into years? We need to take the strategy and we need to start planning how we're going to execute on it. A common way to do that is to take it into the years and block out what do we need to get done. And in this first year, we need to get recognized in Southeast Asia and the Middle East. Learning management delivery systems need to be in place and operational. And we're aiming to get our first Southeast Asian Learning Center open and revenue generating. Great, good. Now, it doesn't stop there. That's year one. Year two, get recognized in Sub-Saharan Africa, recruit star lecturers. So we're kind of moving on from where we were starting with our current lecturers. We're going to get star lecturers for the regions, and we're going to get our first Middle East and African learning centers revenue generating. Great. Okay. And then maybe year three, we say, well, okay, we know China's a great market for us potentially, but really to do it well, we maybe need to do it in Chinese, and that's going to be a significant investment. So let's get the other things done, get them generating revenue, and then we'll move into China. And we'll also try and expand into a second African learning center. We believe there's enough geographic diversity and people that could do that. These aren't super detailed. They're plotting things out in a logical order, roughly for the years. It could change. It will change, undoubtedly. But at least getting started to break it down into years and what is the logical sequence of things we need to get done. Now, we're going to take it right down to the company planning now. And year one, we had our 3 ideas, our 3 objectives. What are we trying to drive? Recognized in Southeast Asia and Middle East, learning management, Southeast Asia, open and revenue generating. We're now going to take it down to quarters. And again, what is it we need to get done in quarter one? Well, how can we build a cost-effective marketing solution, develop awareness? What do we need to consider when choosing a learning platform? Those are the 2 parts that really we kind of say, well, that's where we need to start. In quarter 2, can we use the approach, the marketing approach, to develop awareness in Middle East? Can we ensure the LMS implementation and adoption is a success? I mean, again, we've got to find a solution and we've got to implement it. How will we manage tuition and billing? Something that needs to be thought through. Q3, what do we need to consider successful academy operation to drive revenues? We're going to basically break out into the quarters and probably onto quarter 4. Now, we are really focusing on these. These are placeholders for future quarters. Again, depending how things go here, these may change. But we've at least given ourselves an indication. We've broke it out into something we believe is achievable. We haven't put too much time and effort into it. We put, what are we going to do? You know, what are the areas we need to focus on? Which is fine. What we're going to do now is kind of say, well, we've developed them, but one of the things we do need to do at this stage is start the discussions with the team, department heads, department management, the level down. We need to make sure that we get buy-in, an agreement from the teams and departments. This is going to be our company Q1 objectives, or a version of it. But if I'm setting them as a leader, I should really have discussed it with the teams, make sure that everybody agrees this is the right path to go on, or most people believe it's the right path to go on. And from that, we'll then start to take them to develop our company objectives and set and align OKRs through an organization. So a lot of you will have seen this chart before. So basically, someone said, I can't hear anything. Anna, the voice is working?
Yes, everything is working.
Super. I just saw somebody say, I can't hear anything. So here we're talking about strategy to company objectives. There's a bit more to it. You know, this is a simple diagram. Strategy does lead to company objectives. There's some steps in between there, taking a 3 to 5 year strategy, mapping it out, thinking through it logically till we break it down to the company objectives. What do I mean by company objectives? Well, in this case, we've set annual objectives. You don't have to set annual objectives, but a lot of companies that are already operational, annuals often make sense. Now, this is the first one. This wording has already changed a little bit. So I've improved the wording of our annual objective. I've tried to make it a little bit more inspirational. We have a second one, learning management systems in place, and we launch successful staff delivering revenues. We move from there on to what is it in the quarter? Now, this is our annual objective 1. And in the first quarter, we want to develop the recognition in Southeast Asia. That came from our mapping, and that's fine. That's good enough. Objective 2, we have learning and management systems in place. Well, that has to start with finding the right learning management system that meets our needs now and in the future. We did have a third annual objective, which is about launching successfully in Asia, but we're not going to launch this quarter. That is going to come into play later on. We have other things we need to get completed before we can get our staffed academy up and running later on. So In this particular case, our annual objectives to our quarter, develop recognition in Southeast Asia, those two are still at the company level. In this case, they are aligning to the marketing department. It can be that an OKR at the quarterly level aligns to a single department. It can be that it aligns to multiple departments. In these two examples, we've separated them just to keep it quite simple, but in a lot of cases, this may well be something that touches in a number of different departments or teams within the company. But what we've got to do is take from this company level and quarterly level down eventually to the teams. So let's have a look at that process. Well, yes, we know from a company level what we need to do. We need to develop that recognition in Southeast Asia. The marketing department head, who has 3 different teams, PR, social media, and content marketing under him, has a little bit redefined it. And he said, set up cost-effective campaigns that get traction in Southeast Asia. Undoubtedly, the other thing that people are involved in is budgeting, and the marketing department leader knows that he needs to make sure he has cost-effective marketing. He has a limit in his finance, so he's probably defined what that means separately, and he shared that with the teams to allow them to set up the best key results and objectives and key results they can, which is what they go off and do. So the public relation team has said, right, okay, visibility events and media, and we're going to attend 2 events and get 50 prospective students, and we're going to publish 3 adverts in traditional media channels that deliver 10,000 visits to our webpage. So basically, we're going to put into some traditional media outlets and see the visitors coming to a particular landing page and measure the success of that. Social media. Now, test campaigns to see which channel delivers in Southeast Asia. There are many different social media channels these days, but this team has said, right, Facebook and Instagram are the 2 they're focusing on. One, they're looking to get followers. On the other one, they're looking to get impressions and click-through rates to see that people follow through and come back to us. And then we have a content marketing group who are going to publish success stories. So we've got alumni, people that have become famous or successful, and we're going to publish 2 a month, so 6 over the quarter. But we're not measuring the publishing, we're measuring how many views we get. So we're looking to get 100,000 views. We're also going to try and publish 3 research articles. We're trying to make sure we're seeing the subject matter experts. And then we've got content views to main landing pages that we're getting at least a 30% conversion of people coming here to come and visit our website. So basically, we've gone through from the company level quarterly through a department alignment and narrowing of the focus, setting of a better focus down to the team OKRs. The second one, learning system, going straight to the team. So the right learning management system, and the technology team has then developed their OKR, looking at finding the solutions, narrowing down the supply, getting reference, installation interviews, etc. Outcomes that they're going to drive to make it happen. What we've now got is we have annual objectives that have come from our strategy. We have what are we going to focus on in Q1, and it has been aligned all the way down to the team. So the teams are working on outcomes they're going to drive back up to drive the quarterly and the annual objectives forward. One thing I want to come back to, let's come back to that last team OKR, which was for the tech team. Now, how did they develop that? And it may be they developed the key results, but it may be also that they started with the initiatives, projects, plans. What are they going to do? One of the areas and one of the common issues with OKRs is people will take this and put them into key results, or they will jumble things together. when you're developing, you may well say, well, to evaluate the LMS, what would we need now and tomorrow? Well, we need the success criteria. We'll need to evaluate. We need to, I maybe need to educate myself. I'm going to read a lot of articles, and we need to think about the billing integration capabilities. That may be our starting point. So we thought about the initiative projects we need to work on, very broad. And then from there, we would find outcome measures that would tell us we're getting it. Or we could have developed the key results and then come to the initiatives, plans, projects. What's important is we have both. If I have key results, but I don't have any consideration for how to drive them forward, it won't work. If I have just initiatives, projects, and no measures of what success really looks like, it won't work either. The execution elements, plans, projects, drive the key results, which are the outcomes forward. I want to talk about cross-functional alignment now, and we're just going to do this briefly because we see it as one of the areas that a lot of people get knotted up on. They focus on cross-functional alignment. I think it comes out of reading some OKR content, but not understanding quite what it truly means. Well, if we had two teams, we could have directional alignment, meaning the sales team and the technology team look at each other's OKRs and understand, yes, we're moving in a common direction. They might be aligned up to a company level objective above that's aligning it, or they just understand they're working together. There's not different directions. That's alignment. That is a very basic level of alignment. There's nothing connecting their two OKRs except that they understand each other's and they're working in the same direction. Now, a lot of times what people often refer to is we have a team and we have dependencies on other teams. And the big question often is what is the dependency? Is it an initiative, plan, project, task? Does the technology team need to do something to drive the sales team forward? Sometimes it's not a huge element, meaning it shouldn't really be an OKR. It is a part of an initiative, plan, project, or task that is helping this team out. It could possibly be an aligned OKR, meaning the technology team's OKR, which means it's an improvement for the technology team that is delivering the improvement to the sales team, needs a whole OKR, but only if it's really big enough. The setting of OKRs and how do you align really needs thinking through. Now, there is one other thing people mean, and often people talk about, well, we want to have shared KRs and shared elements. Well, often what that really means is we have the need for a cross-functional team. If we have more than two teams, if we have 3, 4, 5, 6 teams, all the teams in the company, if we're looking to drive something across the company, a change across all teams in the whole company, it might be we actually need to set up a cross-functional team. We set OKRs for the cross-functional team, and individuals from different areas are in that team. It's usually about long-term improvements. It's not something for a week or two. It's usually where you've got at least a quarter or multiple quarters where you need multiple people to input and drive it forward. The one thing is the simplest alignment is often the best to focus the teams. Simple is always better with OKRs. What we tend to recommend is either stick to Team A with Team B initiatives, objectives, plans feeding in, so not making it too complicated, or a cross-functional team where Team A objectives, which is the cross-functional team, has, say, marketing, design, and product. Could be more individuals from different teams in there as well. Could include some leadership elements as well in there. But those are the two we recommend. There are other ways to do it, and as I said, you can align OKRs. It tends to work well when you've got your OKR processes working well and you understand at what level and the connection between. Keeping things simple is the key for accountability. trying to make OKRs work. Make sure we've got to think about setting good OKRs, good KRs, executing on the right initiatives to drive them forward, etc. And just making sure we don't get lost is super, super important, particularly for those of you starting out. If you're new to OKRs, don't overcomplicate it. So, strategy to OKR summary. Pretty much use whichever method works for you to build your strategy. I discussed Roger Martin. Personally, I like that. There are other good methods out there. I think there's enough methods to pick one that works for you. You need to do the strategy before we start planning. Now, that leads into the strategy map and objectives are separate and different. Now, one of the things we often see at Weekdone is somebody comes with their 10-page Word document detailing everything. And it's a real mix of strategy map, different timescales, objectives, KPIs, bits of budgets in there, everything kind of put together, but all in one. And it's very important that you separate the strategy map, objectives at the leadership level to make sure everything is clear and mapped out. And it allows you to then drive the rest of the organization in the shorter term directions you want. Super important is the aligning of the C-level objectives through the departments or teams. It connects the right focus. It connects that level of time that we're going to spend on improving things to drive the right direction. It doesn't mean you can ignore the setting of good outcome KRs and execution of plans to drive them. It's critically important. Often you see people saying, well, my OKRs didn't move, or we didn't achieve our OKRs. And when you look into it more and discuss it with them, one of the items is they didn't execute or didn't spend enough time executing on the plans and projects that was actually going to make the key results move forward. So you need to make sure we've set good KRs. We need to make sure we're clearly executing plans, projects to drive them forward. It's also what drives engagement. These two things alone will drive the engagement. And don't let cross-team alignment make your OKR setting complicated or complex. It's one of those areas you can build up to. Getting teams focused and aligned is critical first. Getting the cross-team alignment can be worked on. There's a number of things, and we've done other webinars on the processes. A lot of that alignment will happen with the sharing and learning lessons and the other processes you need to follow with the OKRs. Don't try to make it too mechanical at the beginning. Really, to conclude, spending out valuable improvement time. OKRs are focused on improvement, taking the time we have to improve and using it wisely. If it's a day, if it's 3 days in a week, whatever it may be, make sure we're using that to really drive improvements in the business. These improvements are aligned with the upper management. So super, that would work. And that's how OKRs work for us, but we've done a number of webinars. The OKRs can be coming from strategy, as long as you go through strategy setting to mapping out your strategy to setting your objectives at the high level and then working them down through the organization. So that's the end of the webinar. I hope it was useful. If any of you do have questions later on, you can email us at hello@weekdone.com or connect with us on LinkedIn. You can also send me an email, richard@weekdone.com, and my LinkedIn is down below. So let me just first of all end the poll and share the results. So we got a real mixture of OKR champions, leaders, HR consultants, and team managers. So a really interesting mixture of different people involved in the OKR setting. Very cool. Good. Anna, Do we
We
have any
do.
questions?
Yeah, we do have a lot of questions, and some of them we have been answering during the presentation, but I feel when it comes to strategy, some of the areas are really, they cannot be one size fits all kind of answer. So it would be interesting to discuss some of these areas. I will mention some of the things that we discussed already in the chats earlier, wherever it makes sense, right? So at first, before we move on directly into the questions, I wanted to mention that in March, we are going to have a coaching course for any of you who would like to become OKR champions in your company. This coaching course will help you develop all of the necessary skills to move on from the strategy planning to OKR to day-to-day project management. So it's kind of like the goal setting, wholesome process and approach. That's what we're going to be discussing. This is a practical workshop, meaning that within the course of the workshop, you're going to develop your OKR tree from strategy to your OKRs. And so you will be leaving that course already with something ready to be put into action. If you are interested, I am going to put the link in the chat so you can click on it and maybe bookmark it to come back to it later. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and ask. We're going to be in touch about that one as well. So now let's move on to the question sheet. And the first question is really about OKRs and KPIs and how they're related. We have a bunch of questions on the same topic. And I did post already our KPIs versus OKRs webinar in the chat.
Okay.
So please make sure to bookmark that one as well. So the question is, how do you balance keeping KRs shorter and achievable within the desired time frame and with the desire for long-term measurements versus annual targets?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because ultimately you're trying to reach those targets, and the common one is revenue. So, okay, we want to grow the business from 1 million to 2 million revenue over the year, and we kind of need to think about how are we going to achieve that. The point of the OKR is to really define what do we need to improve, grow, change, or innovate on to get us that growth of the KPI. The point is that we need to really think about maybe in Q1 doing certain things to get ourselves on track for the revenue, or Q1, Q2, Q3 to do things to get ourselves on track for the revenue. You should have KPIs. You're going to set KPIs annual and likely you've got quarterly and monthly KPIs, etc. But are you or aren't you going to achieve them? If you aren't going to achieve them, you need to think about setting an OKR. One of the graphs earlier, we said KPIs can define the OKRs. That could be at the company level. If it's revenue at the top of the company, what is it we need to improve company-wide to get ourselves to the next level of revenue? So basically, the KPIs are there. How you achieve them is by setting good improvements in the business, and that is the point of OKR. So you just need to map them through. I recommend, we've done multiple webinars on that topic. So Anna, if you posted that, I would suggest watch it, because I think it is important to understand what and how you set OKRs from KPIs, or the need to improve KPIs.
Since we do have quite a few questions differently phrased, but on the same topic, basically, how do KRs relate to higher level revenue metrics? I'd like to mention that there is this belief that your OKR should be directly mathematically impacting your KPIs, which just makes it not an OKR, but generally like a tree of different metrics, right? It's not the point. The point would be for your OKRs to actually say how you're going to impact the revenue number, the customer number, so whatever number that you want to drive. There was a question about the annual recurring revenue before. How do you connect an OKR to that? The only way, like when Richard presented the example, would be to say, where are you going to start? How are you going to go about it? What is your approach to change your revenue numbers? What is not working? What are the opportunities that you're going to be trying next, right? And then have the teams actually own an OKR that consists of the outcomes that they can own. Because if you get the teams all to say, what we own is revenue, marketing owns revenue, sales owns revenue, then customer success owns revenue. What you're ultimately saying is like you're just writing the same number on every single wall, on the fence, I don't know, or not putting on a poster, but it doesn't make it happen. So you would need really to get the teams to write something actionable and measurable that they can own fully. And revenue is not something one team can own, right? But they can relate to it through a number of outcomes that they develop. So now the next question is more of a general kind, but I like it very much because I think it does highlight how OKRs can be beneficial for businesses. So the question is, what is the difference between OKRs and other goal-setting methodologies like SMART goals, balanced scorecard, etc.?
Wow, that's a big question. They all vary. A lot of them have come out from the 1950s, the total quality management systems, etc., coming from Japan to the US to development of business goal setting over time. All of them are a bit different. You know, SMART goals in some ways are a very simplistic way to set goals. It can work for some organizations. You know, SMART is an acronym for you know, the elements. In a sense, it actually came out after OKRs, although OKRs have become a lot more popular than SMART. I think they're a little bit similar. There's a little bit difference in the way the time part. OKRs fix it quarterly. SMART goals allow you to be very flexible on it. A lot of people can write anything in a SMART goal, whereas I think OKRs help you drive and write good outcome-based measurements, which has a different way of driving things. Things like balanced scorecards and management by objectives, and there's a bunch of others even. There's even some proprietary ones we could go into, but they all vary. Some of them are longer term related. Balanced scorecards tends to be something used with very large companies. It's heavy, management heavy to set up and operate on. Some companies like it where you've got the balance of the business and the customer and finance and all those elements in sync. I think I wouldn't say there's necessarily one system is the winner over the others. I think it depends which system works best for you. I think the big advantages of OKRs is it's relatively agile, it's flexible. It should, once you've got used to setting OKRs, it should be quick to set them and get people focused on execution, i.e. you don't spend a long time planning into the future, you take it quarter by quarter. Secondly, you execute, learn, and then develop your next quarter's goals to align and improve the business. And I think OKRs have a flexibility on that side that works really well. A lot of people take a lot of flexibility in their OKRs and the way they set them, which probably isn't the best way to do it, but it is an agile process. It's not too heavy for organizations. And I think it works particularly well for many, many organizations to set good goals. I don't know, Anna, what would your comments be on that? Because we see a lot of people coming from different types of goal setting.
I think like you said, the underlying principles of what do we want to achieve and how we're going to do it, and let's make sure we focus on something measurable and achievable that stays the same. Like if you are setting goals properly from system to system, what changes is the format. And there is a reason why OKR format is much better for scale, for example, or for keeping it the same over the course of the company development and maturity journey. And the reason is, if you take a SMART goal, it's normally like a really, really long sentence, right? And it has everything that you need to know in that sentence. And it just becomes really hard to understand, and more importantly, really hard to communicate to other people in the company who maybe were not in the room when this goal was set, right? But with OKRs, what you do is you separate the problem you're solving from the commitment, measurable commitment that you're making for the 90 days. So your objective is the problem that you're solving, and your key results are measurable commitments. And this is something that and also like you can have several of them. So you can see clearly which ones you're achieving and which ones you're not. And if together they're actually bringing you closer to the improvement that you want, right? And it becomes much easier once you separate things into bits and pieces. It's much easier to communicate it to other people. So that's why it works so much better, and it's really simple as a format, right? So that's why I think OKR wins over and over again when different companies are comparing different models. Yeah. With balanced scorecard, and I said in the beginning that I had a feeling that a lot of people are coming with balanced scorecard background, and balanced scorecard helps you to get started when your company is in the state of total mess. Let's say, like, you have no goals, you don't know where you're going, and balanced scorecard does help you at this high level to separate some areas, but that's all it does. Just helps you to figure out what you should even be talking about in general, and then you still need to work on how your goals are going to be set. Would you agree, Richard? Like, did you see like balanced scorecard being
and I've
like
seen
a goal
it used on
tool?
Big organizations where you have a lot of management horsepower to spend time doing goal setting. I think it becomes rarer and rarer in organizations that we have that middle management levels that have all this time to set and align and consider all different directions. Usually these days it's much more about becoming more agile, moving quicker, seeing what works and moving forward rather than planning out long into the future. I think it varies. You know, I've seen it work for businesses really well and other businesses not at all. I just think what works for you as an organization depends on your organization, depends on culture, depends on a lot of different areas in your particular business.
I think someone just mentioned as well that the benefits of the balanced scorecard, that you can keep everything on one sheet, like all of the different big areas. And I agree with that. I think it's a great starting point from when you didn't have any clarity before, right? Yeah. You have an ability to put everything on one sheet. It's a great starting point. It's not yet goal setting. It's more laying out what we want, but it's not how we're going to get there, right? So that's what OKRs do. Right?
Yeah, they're much more practical. I think the point of OKRs is to be practical and pragmatic about getting improvements made in the organization. That's it.
No, forward-looking, yeah. So the next question is really one coming from our customer at Weekdone, and that company actually has been working with OKRs for some time, and the question just shows how it can be tricky even if you have a lot of experience working with OKRs as a team. So the question is it okay to use to-dos as key results? Many of our objectives are long-term, and we will not be able to measure and improve the KPIs until the systems are built. For this reason, departments are listing in their KRs the building of the systems. And before we jump into discussion, I'd like to say that I did mention that if you feel like it's too hard and it's taking too much time, you can use an approach of writing kind of like milestones in your OKRs, but it's a very specific use case, right? Yeah. Where you still need an outcome, It can be a qualitative outcome, but you still need the why you're doing it. So if you're building a CRM system, why are you doing that? What's the point? What are you going to achieve with that? Try to always keep searching for something that you can track during this quarter. And if it's a process to be built, say which parts of this process are going to be built this quarter. Consider the milestones, count the number of milestones, and use it as a target value. This is not the most perfect KR that you can have, but it will get you there where you need to be, right? What do you think, Richard? Do you feel like...
I agree. We see it also with startups, you know, very early stage companies. You're going out to a market, and even if you've set your strategy, you need to build something and start testing it. And you're not really in an improvement phase. You just need to get some things done. And keeping everybody aligned, in a sense, is the most important part at that stage. Will you have perfect outcome-based key results? No, because I don't know what the outcomes are. I could guess at some numbers and maybe that would help us. But I think there is, in some cases, stages will work. We've, you know, even within Weekdone, we have sometimes used key results with stages in them. There's things it's the only way you can measure, did we get it done or did we improve it? You try not to do it. And like you say, how you word it, what is the point of measuring the stages? Is it just to say we launched something, or is it to drive the launch and then we try to measure something? Even if they're not perfect measures underneath it, we might have 3 key results, and we might have one of them that's stages and one of them is an estimation, maybe on customers that are going to use it, for example. So I think, is it acceptable? If you have to use it, you have to use it. Sometimes it's the only way to do it. I think trying to make sure you try and balance it with outcome key results, and also making sure that if you are starting doing that and you've got those processes running, and you move from getting the processes running to improving the processes, when you go to improving processes, you move to measurable outcomes.
Again, there are, like, I think in general, 3 different types of KRs that any company can consider. And we will be covering this specific topic in detail during the OKR Master course that I mentioned. I did post the link. So for all of you who is interested learning this, take a look at it. For all of you who want a quicker answer and maybe like quicker guidance on this topic, we also have an OKR Learning Center where we have a recorded workshop. The issue there is that the examples used might be a little bit too generic for you, but we've tried to choose the examples that would make sense to the most number of people. But if you want something more specific, that has to be, you know, a personalized type of workshop. I will post the link to the recorded one, so you may want to consider looking at it as well. Now, let's move on to the next question. Do you think that your initiatives drive the key results of the objectives, or do they drive the objectives themselves? I would think that the outcome of the initiatives will be measurable through key results of the OKR.
I have to think about that one.
Right, initiatives, are they driving KRs or are they driving objectives?
Well, they're driving, in a sense, both, because the key results are, I personally often, I like to think about the key results as what does success look like. Often the problem with success is, yes, you know, and we talked earlier about KPIs, and we might say, hey, we want to grow the revenue up here, but we have a cycle time of 6 months to see the revenue change. So my key results are earlier measures of success. And what I do to make the changes would show, okay, if I did this, did it drive whatever my key results are, i.e., how am I measuring success of the objective forward? So the initiatives, plans, projects, tasks, however you think about it, should be measurable through the key results. If you haven't got the key results and initiatives working together, if you can't action something to move the key result, or you have the key result and you don't have any initiatives to drive it forward, it will never work. The key results, however, though, should be telling you, are we driving the objective forward? They're all related. They're just written in the OKR format. And for me, it's showing me success. It's showing me that if I did, and a quick example might be, hey, I've got a key result. I want to reduce discounting, averaging from 10 to 5%. That's the outcome I'm looking for. And maybe it's going up to improving profitability, which it would. And then I think, well, maybe the first step is we put a discounting policy, authorization policy in place. And then maybe we think about pricing and some other things that we need to do to improve the gross margin or profitability, etc. Those executing on those things, did it reduce the discount in that 1KR case? Did I manage to bring it down practically? That's what success would look like. And that would feed into, let's say, increasing profitability of the sales team or return on sales for the sales team. So I think it's, they are related, interrelated, but the KRs need to be the outcome, what success looks like. The initiatives are what you do to drive those forward.
Yeah. And sometimes initiatives are driving the whole OKR, sometimes driving separate KRs. Depends on how you draft everything, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think if you have any follow-up question on this one, let us know. We'll take a look at the Q&A. But for now, let's move on to the next one. Is it necessary for all employees to know the OKR method in full and in precise detail? Or is it possible for them to complete the work without accurate knowledge of all of the information, especially at the beginning of using this method?
Yes. It's unrealistic that everybody will understand the OKR method well at the beginning. And I think it's one of the things when you're rolling out OKRs, you know, Anna talked about doing champion education and getting people educated. You start often from the top of the organization and you work down with education. Getting people within a team to execute on things that drive the OKRs forward and showing them what and why it's being used is often a multiple month, week, quarter learnings. People will understand what it's there for over time. Will everybody understand at the beginning? No. Does everybody need to understand it? No. What you probably need is you need leadership to understand it. And you probably need, if you're going team OKRs at the beginning, you need the team leader to understand it. That's the minimum. You need whoever has OKRs or is in charge of running the team OKRs to understand it. If you're just going to roll it out and start with a leadership group, maybe it's a group of departments, high-level VPs, those people need to understand it. Does everybody else underneath need to at the beginning? No. They could roll it out and show people and immerse people and slowly educate them in it. I think it's unrealistic in many organizations to get everybody to understand it. You can certainly do training, you can certainly explain it and get people to think about it, but will they fully understand it? No, everybody won't at the beginning.
I think the key is to just involve people in discussing what needs to be in OKRs. You don't have to teach them how to do OKRs at the beginning. And by people, I mean the team who is going to be involved in executing on those OKRs. You don't have to explain what an objective is, what KRs are, but you do need to involve them in the discussion process when you're trying to come up with those. Because otherwise, you would write an OKR, but it would be missing the valuable input from those people. And also people might not relate to it the same way that you would. So that would be missing the point. And I think
involving them is a great way for people to learn practically versus learning by going through a training course or something. It's using it that really makes OKRs connect with people.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next question. We are wondering whether the OKR method will work in manufacturing industry like us, having more than 20,000 workforce.
So I imagine that you're not going to have 20,000 people in an OKR system. How many people are shop floor production orientated in the manufacturing? Is how many people are involved in improvements? OKRs are focused on improvements, and again, how many people you use OKRs with depends on what level it needs to go down to. As we were kind of discussing there before, you might involve people in the discussions, but it doesn't mean they have to understand and work with OKRs. We have seen many different organizations use it, from manufacturing industries with large volume of people. However, it might be that only a upper level are using OKRs to drive the improvements in the business, and that improvements might be affecting the manufacturing, the shop floor areas, but it's about the improvement side, not about the day-to-day operation. So the number of people doesn't really matter. It's how are you going to align the OKRs? One of the more complicated things is, how do we set and align OKRs to drive improvements in the organization? And that's something you would have to think through, and not knowing the organization and how many people are on the manufacturing side versus how many are on the management side makes it much harder.
For people in manufacturing, and actually maybe for general education, not only for manufacturing as an industry, I would recommend a book called The Goal, The Journey of Ongoing Improvement, I think it's called. That book is focused on the manufacturing and the manufacturing as a business, and finding constraints and bottlenecks and how to identify them and how to bring your team on board and how to coordinate cross-functional collaboration. And I did in the past recommend this book to a few of our customers who are also large manufacturing firms, and it did help a lot because it kind of puts everyone in the same mindset. When you read the same book, you have the same topics to talk about. And it does help a lot to put things into perspective. In my own opinion, OKRs will work in the manufacturing company, in any company. It just depends on how you go about it, the implementation strategies, right? But it works for any type of business. I think maybe the only type of business when OKRs really don't make sense is not really a type of business, but rather a stage of a company, which is very early stage, when your priorities change every hour. Like when you have no product market fit and you're still running around trying to figure out what you're going to do. In that case, OKRs is just too much work for you. Just go for SMART goals or whatever goals and just try to get it all done, right? Versus trying to communicate your strategy to other people. But whenever you have teams and you need to manage different people and those people have other people working with them, then OKRs makes a lot of sense in general, right? Let me check. I think we don't have any more questions, at least nothing is appearing. But if anything comes to mind, you know how to find us. You see the contact details on the screen. But so far, I think that is all, Richard.
Super. Thanks a lot, Anna. And thank you, everybody, for attending. And I hope you found it useful. You'll get the recording in 24 hours or less. And thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.